Chair Long, I apologize for the delay, but we're all set now.
We're all set. Okay, great. Well, then I will call this meeting of the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency board meeting on February 15th, 2022 to order. And Paula, if you would please call the roll.
Diana Bailey,
Present.
Tracy Coburn is absent. Tracy Dujic,
Here.
Marcy Long,
Here.
Tim McLaughlin,
Present.
Maria Pena, not here. Dan Richardson,
Present.
Kathy Schwartz.
Present.
You.
Thank you.
Question, Chair Long,
Yes.
are we sure that Maria Pena has been appointed to this board?
Oh, no, that was my mistake again. I'm so sorry. I want
Okay.
her to be a part of this board. It is my fervent desire.
I think she's appointed to another board for this.
She is,
Yeah.
she is, but I
Okay.
copied this from the minutes last time and she was there erroneously.
Okay,
And now I've humiliated myself in front of everyone. Let's just move on.
Okay, Paula, sorry, I was trying to count and then I got distracted. Do we have quorum?
We do.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if you will all please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Someday we'll figure out how to do that without a lag and everybody sounding like we're a chorus. Okay, so you have the packet before you, including the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Tracy. Do I have a second?
I'll second. This is Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, so it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair Long.
Yes, yes.
Did Board Member Richardson vote?
Yes, I said aye.
You.
All right. Okay, so at this time, we have approval of the minutes as next on the agenda. Are there any comments or questions about the minutes? Any changes? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Dan.
I'll second. It's Tracy.
Thank you, Tracy. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Yes.
Excuse me, Chair Long.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Lindsay Chimay should have been added to the roll call. She is a new board
Yes.
member.
Thank you. I was just about to introduce her, so that is perfect. So before I do that, though, I do want to take just a moment and acknowledge the service that board member John Fredericks provided to Urban Renewal. As many of you already know, he recently passed away, and he had given this board at least 5 years of service. I think he came on at the same time that I did, although I'm not 100% sure. And so I just wanted to acknowledge his years of service. And he served in many other roles in the community as well. And so if I didn't speak to anyone ahead of time, but if anyone also wanted to make a comment, this would be an appropriate time to say something if you'd like to. Okay. Yes.
Chair, I
Yes.
just wanted, I found John Fredericks to be so helpful to me when I started. And the comment he made to me, which I found, I was pleased as punch, because he said, Alice, this is the first time anybody from Urban Renewal staff has ever called to ask my opinion about something. And I was glad to be that person to call him for the first time, but also so thankful that I could just pick up the phone and hear his perspective on things and hear his history. It was incredibly helpful to me, and I just am so grateful that I had a chance to know him and to work with him.
Thank you for those kind words, Alice. Okay. Next, not related to that, but a coincidence of timing, we do have a new board member to add. Lindsay, are you going by Brady or Gamay?
My maiden name is Brady, and Jamae is so much more complicated to say, but I do go by Jamae. I just haven't.
Okay. So I'm going to say it so I can say it right. So Lindsay Jamae is joining us as a member of the public representing a business downtown. Alice, did you want to say anything else about the appointment or?
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. I had a chance to give, we had a chance to orient one another about ourselves, but also the board this afternoon, or maybe it was this morning. It was this morning. Yeah, and it was a really good discussion. I trust, given her history working in the urban renewal area as a property owner and as a business owner and a passionate downtown booster, I trust that she will get in and ask questions as needed. And I assured her that this is a group where she can feel comfortable asking any question she wants. About the history in the urban renewal program, I certainly have taken advantage of that. So expect that. And the good news is we're going to be heading into the next meeting. We'll talk more about the incentive program. We'll talk about annual goal setting, and we'll be following that up in the next 2-3 months with wrapping up the strategic planning for the urban renewal area. And that's a particular strength that Lindsay brings to our board. So I'm looking forward to having her contribute in that way and contribute as a downtown business owner who is in the district every day, all the time, and very, very invested in it. So thank you and welcome.
Yes, thank you. And just so every other board member knows, I told her that you're all friendly and would be happy to talk to her. So she might be calling you. So welcome to the team, Lindsay. Okay, at this time, I'm going to open it up for public comment. I see a couple members of the media and public have joined. Is there anyone who would like to make a comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move right into the discussion items. First one is the annual financial report for the fiscal year of 2020-2021. Director Cannon?
Chair Long and members of the board, annually we bring forward our financial audit and our annual report. The financial audit is something we are required to do both for the city and the Urban Renewal Agency. This year, I have Angie Wilson, our finance director, who's available as a resource this evening if needed. I'm pleased to say for 2 years in a row, we've had a clean audit and really, really pleased with those results. And thanks to Angie and her team for all the hard work on the audit this year. That's great news. The second report, and so please direct any questions to her. She knows more than I do. The second report is required by state law. We're required to file an annual report with the City Council by January 31st of each year, and also publish it in the newspaper. We've done that already. And so I gave it to you and put it in the packet. This report is really to be transparent with our finances in the Urban Renewal District. That's the intent. But also one of the pages in the report highlights the amount, just so it's very transparent, highlights the amount of urban renewal revenue that's foregone by each taxing entity. So it's important to report that out annually, and it also, I think it's good for transparency, whether it's a state law or not. So we have, by bringing it here, we're fulfilling an obligation that we have, but also I'll be getting this out to each of the taxing entities in the mail here shortly. So that will fulfill our annual requirement. Happy to answer any questions you have about each of those documents.
Any board members have any questions or comments? I just want to acknowledge Angie and her staff. Sometimes I think, we see the audit and it's, frankly, it's always a clean audit, Angie. So I think we get lulled into thinking that this is an easy thing to achieve, and it really is not. It takes a lot of work and effort, and a lot of good work on your part, keeping us as an agency on the straight and narrow. And I appreciate it. I just don't want to let that go by as seeming like this is some easy breezy thing. I know it's hard. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Darcy.
Yeah. And
we had a new audit consultant this year as well. So there was a break-in phase, a lot of ramp up and learning between our team and their team. So that was a little bit of extra effort that she didn't have to expend last year.
Yep, that's great. Okay, and so I'm sure everyone's had a chance to look at the packet, but if not, also take a look at that item B, just to take a look and see exactly which taxing entities, which many of you represent a taxing entity, how much is being given up by those taxing entities, and a reminder to us that we're good stewards of those dollars that would otherwise be going to them for other uses. Okay, how about an update on the First Street project?
Well, actually, item B, so we just covered item A. And item B, I have a consultant, Nick Popanek, who will present the presentation this evening. Welcome, Nick. Last year, you may recall that I asked Nick to, and Tiberius, his firm is Tiberius Solutions out of Portland. Nick provides, his firm provides services throughout the state to urban renewal agencies and public entities in general, financial planning, financial analysis, cash flow, projections and so forth. So really appreciate his good work. Last year, he did a lot of heavy lifting to complete this for us. And this year it was an update. And because we're in the last few years of our agency, I think it's really important that we know pretty precisely how much money we're going to have every year. So I'm probably going to bring Nick's team back or work with Angie. Angie's busy this time of year, so I don't like to burden her with one more task. But I really appreciate this because it allows us to have a really good snapshot of our remaining funds that will be available in the coming years as we wind down this urban renewal effort. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nick and for our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Alice. Let me get this slideshow started. So thank you all for having me here virtually tonight. As Alice said, my firm, Tiberius Solutions, specializes in public finance analysis. And in particular, we do an awful lot of work for urban renewal agencies across Oregon. And the last 5 years, we've done over 100 urban renewal projects for cities and counties across the state, including a year ago when we were here providing similar information for you. And as Alice said, last year we did sort of a lot of heavy lifting, looking at historical data, updating projections for future growth and assessed value in the area, and coming up with a new cash flow projection. This year, it was really just a minor update with a light touch, because as we go through these slides, you'll see that the updated assessed value and tax information for the current fiscal year is really right in line with the projections that we had from last year. So there really wasn't any need to do any sort of substantial revision to these forecasts. As we start here, I always like to look backwards at the historical trends and assessed value in this area. So this shows the last decade of data that's available from the county assessor. And over this period of time, growth in the area has been an average of 3.3% per year. Over the last 5 years, it's actually been a little bit slower than that, at around 2.5% per year. And so this is a typical pattern that we see in areas that are largely built out. The state of Oregon property tax system restricts any increase in assessed value for a given property to 3% per year from appreciation for tax purposes, unless you have new construction taking place on it. So when we have areas that are largely built out, we do tend to see trends like this, where we are right around that 3% per year level. In terms of the projection going forward, we do essentially extend that same line going forward for the next 5 or 6 years, which is the anticipated duration of this urban renewal area. This is essentially identical to the forecast that we had last year. So that orange line is the forecast from last year, and we are just about right exactly on that line. This is quite a bit different from any of you who participated in the meeting last year when we were giving this similar presentation. The forecast for this area hadn't been updated since 2009. And that older forecast from over a decade ago had anticipated some pretty strong growth, new construction activity taking place in the area in recent years. And that really put it on a much different trajectory. So when we updated it a year ago, we made sure to ratchet things down and make it consistent with the recent historical trends. And we have continued to do that in this forecast. So based on that forecast of assessed value, here is our forecast of the tax increment finance revenues, or TIF revenues, that we estimate the area is going to receive each year into the future. And I believe that there are some folks that may be relatively new to this position. And if there's anybody in the audience listening, I like to just make sure that we go through all of the key terms that are relevant to this calculation of tax increment financing. So much of this revolves around assessed value. And here we see the total assessed value for the area, which is right around $121 million today. We need to compare that to the frozen base value. This frozen base value is the value of properties at the time that the urban renewal area was created. So 25 million in value back then has now grown to over 120 million in value today. The difference between those two figures is known as the increment value. So that's here at 96 million. And again, it's just the total minus the frozen base gets us our increment. That increment value is multiplied by the tax rate for the area, which is just over $17 per thousand of assessed value. And that gets us the amount of gross TIF revenue, the amount that the assessor would collect from all the properties in the area. Now, this gross amount of TIF revenue is actually a little bit different from the actual amount of taxes you'll receive in a given year. For people who pay their property taxes on time up front, the state of Oregon actually gives them a small discount on their tax bill. So that reduces it here. Other folks are delinquent on their taxes and don't pay it at all in a current year. So that reduces it down. Then there are people who used to be delinquent, but now have finally got caught up on their payments. So that bounces it back up in a given year. So there's a number of factors that come into play, and overall, the amount of tax revenue that you're likely to receive in any year is around 2 or 3% less than what's shown here on the gross TIF column. But generally speaking, for planning purposes, this shows you the revenue target that you'd be expecting each year into the future. And so you can see, based on this slow and steady growth in total value, again, this is growing at a little less than 3% per year for the remainder of this forecast period. That leads the increment value to increase from 96 million today to 121 million by 2029. The tax rate stays the same during this whole period, and that leads to our TIF revenues growing from about 1.6 million today all the way up to 2.1 million a year by 2029. So relatively conservative projections of future growth in assessed value still lead to fairly strong growth in tax revenues. This is an increase of roughly a third of today's revenues will be added to the total annual collections by the time you get to 2029.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just going back, I know there's some incentive programs for those with historic buildings where we have frozen our taxes for 10 years as long as we put in, like as long as we fix it up to a certain amount. Is any of that taken into account within this projection? Because I know there's a lot of historic buildings in our area.
So we haven't done that for this forecast. This forecast is all based on percent growth assumptions, makes it very quick and simple to model. An alternative approach, and one that we do use in a number of jurisdictions, is to try and get down into the nitty gritty and identify the specific properties that we think are going to have exceptions to the 3% limit. And so that would either be new construction or it would be the expiration of a previous tax abatement. So if we do know that there are either big new construction projects that take place in this area or properties that are currently experiencing tax abatements that are going to expire over the next couple of years, that is information that we could add into the forecast, and that would make it a little bit more accurate and might show some stronger growth than what we have forecast here.
And Alice, can you comment? We know some of that year, what, like 1 year out, right? When you're doing your budget, because Angie is looking at the tax rolls and stuff. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, Nick and Angie coordinated on this presentation. And so, yeah, it's pretty consistent with our forecast in the proposed budget that you'll see in a couple of months. Yeah, very
Okay.
consistent.
Yeah, so that was a good question, Lindsay. Thank you.
So switching gears slightly from the forecasted tax revenues, we want to make sure we talk about maximum indebtedness. And again, if there are folks that are new to urban renewal or folks in the audience, maximum indebtedness is an important term for urban renewal, but one that doesn't make a lot of sense and is easy to get confused with. So maximum indebtedness is a legal term in Oregon. It's required for every urban renewal area to have one. And it is the total amount of debt that the area can incur over its entire lifespan. Coupled with a state constitution provision that says that tax increment revenues can only be used to pay for debt, it effectively works as a spending limit. So this urban renewal area has been around since 1990. That predates any conversation about maximum indebtedness. But in 99, the laws changed, and that's when urban renewal plans had to establish a maximum indebtedness. And this one was first set at 14 million. A decade later, in 2009, the plan was amended to increase that up to 29 million. And that is where your maximum indebtedness is today. And so whenever this urban renewal area spends $29 million of TIF revenue on projects or debt, that is the end. It can no longer spend any more TIF revenue on any new projects. It can only keep collecting TIF as necessary to pay off old debt, and then it would have to close down. And we are getting close to hitting that $29 million limit. It's possible for the community to increase this maximum indebtedness limit further if there were any political will to do so. But there are some more substantial requirements that you would have to go through in order to make subsequent changes to this. So for the most part, any new increase in this maximum indebtedness would require approval from the taxing districts that are affected by the urban renewal area. I include that in here because it's a technical possibility, but I have not heard anything from city staff to suggest that that's a direction that the city is interested in heading. So when we visualize this maximum indebtedness of the 29 million, a little over or a little less than 23 million has been used to date, leaving about $6 million of remaining capacity on that maximum indebtedness. This slide actually looks exactly the same as the version of the slide from last year. And that's because in the past fiscal year, even though the area did have some expenditures, they were a pretty modest level of expenditures. And the area had revenues other than tax increment financing that were available to them. So predominantly those revenues would be things like if this area had made previous loans to property owners and businesses, and now those private entities were repaying those loans. That is a source of funding that is available to be used on projects in the area that is not subject to the maximum indebtedness limit. And last year, because your level of expenditures were so low, you had enough of those other revenues. They're frequently called program income. You had enough of that program income that it could be used to cover all of your operating expenses without using another dime of TIF revenue. So that's why there wasn't any change in your maximum indebtedness status from one year to the next. So we now have our forecast of tax revenues into the future, and we have our calculation of how much maximum indebtedness capacity is remaining. That allows us to do a cash flow forecast for you, a finance plan. And with that, we show that this area could continue to collect tax increment revenue and make expenditures on projects until 2026, at which point we anticipate you would hit your maximum indebtedness. At that point, no new projects are getting funded, with the exception of any of your program income that you might have. Again, that's separate from this. And then you would continue to collect that TIF revenue for another 3 years, 2029, until you'd be able to pay off all the outstanding debt that the area has. So if this were to occur, that means that over the next 6 or 7 years here through 2029, the area would collect another $8.7 million of tax revenue, and that the total amount of funding that you'd have available for projects is going to be around $9.2 million. I show on this slide how much that is in today's dollars, just to account for inflation. Inflation is a hot topic right now, but we're looking at such a relatively short time frame that inflation is unlikely to have a major impact here. 8.9 versus 9.2, not a huge difference. I work with other communities that are looking 20, 30 years into the future, and there we certainly see inflation taking a much bigger bite out of their spending capacity. So when we said that this district might have around $8.7 million of more tax increment revenue that would collect between now and 2029, we know that that's not free money. It has to come from somewhere. And it's not an increase in anybody's property taxes. It's a division of the taxes that the other overlapping taxing districts are imposing. So this shows the total impacts that are forecast for those districts over that period of time. Important to note that these are the total impacts. This is not an annual number. So the amount any given year is significantly smaller than this. When we look at the jurisdictions that are most significantly impacted, the top dollar amount is for the school district. That has an asterisk by it because school districts in Oregon have a very complicated funding system, but they are essentially not directly impacted by anything that goes on with tax increment financing. So because of the state school funding formula, the state legislature sets a per student funding amount that applies to all students in all school districts across the state. And the state provides grants to each of those school districts to make sure that they receive the same amount of funding. So any change in local property tax revenues, whether it goes up or down, is offset by a corresponding change in the amount of state funding the school district gets. So although they are the largest dollar amount here, if once urban renewal goes away and their local property tax revenues increase, it will not be a major windfall for the school district, because it will just lead to the state reducing the amount of resources they send here. All of the other taxing districts, these are true direct impacts to them. So that we can see that the county, the fire district, and the city are the other three that have, the most significant dollar amounts, over $1 million between now and 2029. All right, thanks for, it looks like we have a hand raised here. Looks like we've got a question.
Yeah, this is Dan. Thank you, Nick. So what hinders the Dalles, or I suppose any other community with an urban renewal agency, from dialing up the amount of local taxes foregone by the school district and funneling those into our urban renewal agency, knowing that it will be backfilled by the state?
Yeah, nothing. Nothing stops them, and that's I think a major reason why we've seen so many urban renewal areas all across the state is that the entities with the largest tax rate is commonly the local school district all across the state, and they aren't directly impacted by it. If urban renewal were directly taking dollars out of the local school system, I think you'd have a lot more folks that would say, you know what, this is great projects, but not worth that trade-off.
Sure.
Kids are our top priority. So I think that certainly comes into play. Now, the one thing is that the tax rate for schools, they are what they are. All these tax rates are already established. And so even though they are the largest impacted tax year, they are, roughly a third of the total tax bill that we're looking at. And so there's no way to use urban renewal to only take money from the school district. If you're using urban renewal here, it's going to impact all these taxing districts proportionately based on the tax rate that they impose. And so
thank you.
It
That
does
makes
have the other impacts on the collateral damage to all these other taxing districts.
Oh, there go my great plans. All right.
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem. All right, so the conclusions that we have here is that historically this area has been experiencing relatively, I would say, slow and steady growth right around that 3% per year, a little higher 5 to 10 years ago and a little lower in the past 5 years. And we assume that continues with about 2.75% growth going forward. That's going to lead your annual income to increase from about 1.6 million today to 2.1 million per year by 2029, when we expect this district would wrap up. When we look at the amount of remaining maximum indebtedness capacity, 6.2 million, plus what you've got in your existing fund balance, which is 3 million. It's actually a little more than 3 million. And by the end of this year, it could be even higher than that. But we're looking at about $9.2 million of capacity for future projects in this area. I will say that because we really like to dig into the weeds and the details, we do have a couple of follow-up questions that we're going to be working with Alice and Angie on to just double check all of these little figures and make sure we've got a very accurate depiction of how much additional spending can occur in this area, because you always want to make sure that's dialed in as you get to these final years of your district. Based on these projections, it looks like it'd be 2026 when you reach your maximum indebtedness. And after that point in time, only new projects that could only be funded with your program income, and any TIF you'd be receiving for the next few years would just be going to pay off any of your outstanding debt. And by 2029, we show that this district would close down and would no longer be collecting any tax revenues, and all the impacted taxing jurisdictions would then see that windfall in terms of increased tax revenue, with the exception of the school district, as we mentioned, which is unaffected by any of this. So that's our full presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have.
I had a question. When you say programming income, what are some examples of that? And
yeah, so program income typically includes any repayment of loans that the agency has made, as well as land sales. So if this area acquired any property over its lifespan and then subsequently sells it, that's program income as well. If it receives and applies for and receives any grant funding, that's program income. So any dollars that wind up in this urban renewal areas bucket without being dollars coming directly from tax increment revenue.
thank you.
One example, Commissioner, Board Member Dujic, is we are expecting a balloon payment, for instance, on the Commodore project. We extended a loan, and right now it's interest-only payments, and I think it's $290,000 roundabout. So that repayment will come back, and that would be program revenue. Is that right, Nick? Okay.
Yep.
Excellent question. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you very much for the presentation, Nick. That's very helpful to so many people. It's complicated, and You may feel it's redundant from last year, but I assure you, we're all happy to have the presentation again, and of course, the new people as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next discussion item, which is the First Street project update.
Chair Long and members of the board, I want to just a follow on to what the discussion we just had. What this does for us is it puts the next few years into focus for us. We have 9.2 million left, and see about 4 years left to spend it. So I mean 4 years left to utilize that or to collect revenue. And I suppose if we have remaining funds, we can extend those into the following fiscal years. But that just puts our activities into focus, and the need for goal setting and strategic planning becomes all the more important. And I know we've been headed there, and I just wanted to say that. And I also wanted to follow up that I have on these discussion items, I have some bad news first, and then I have some good news. The bad news isn't completely unexpected. On the First Street project, let me give an update on that. This project, I want to do a better job than I have in the past few months of describing the projects for those that might be attending for the first time. This project we've had in the works since 2008, when we were awarded a $1.6 million federal grant to complete what was called the First Street Riverfront Connection Project. It was intended to be a connection that would start in Lewis and Clark Park and go under the railroad at Washington Street and then get into downtown that way. It morphed. The project costs were high. Working with the railroad on that kind of improvement was difficult. And so the project was put on the shelf for a few years. It's back as of 2018 or 2019. And First Street is going to be a complete rebuild of First Street, which is a very, very old street, as I'm learning. And it will be new utility lines in that street, which are sorely needed, and new fill material, or some new fill material, just to reinforce the street. Brand new sidewalks, which are needed, with ADA ramps and new asphalt. And the project will also include on both Court Street and Washington Streets, wrapping around the corner and improving the half of the street between First Street and the alley as well. So it will touch a lot of the city on that kind of northern end of downtown next to the railroad. The project, as I said, has been underway. It got started again after being on the shelf for a few years in 2018, 2019. We have an agreement, because it's a federal project that receives federal funds. We have a cooperative arrangement with ODOT, Oregon Department of Transportation. That anytime you have federal dollars, it's more complicated, and that's not a bad thing necessarily, but it just, it's way above, I was going to say way above my pay grade, not necessarily, but it's a level of sophistication that I don't always have, knowing how to navigate through all the various federal requirements for FHWA dollars. That being said, I have some great project support on this, and we have a design team. We've now completed 95% design of the project as of September of 2021. We have a new cost estimate, and we are making good progress. So what I learned in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I've had to work with Angie a bit to refine the number, but it looks like we're going to have to contribute this fiscal year another $1.1 million to the project. Not unexpected from my perspective, but it is, we are seeing inflation in construction costs, as one would expect. And I think a year ago, we expected that the dollar amount would go up as we progressed from 75% to the 95% design plan. So that will be reflected in the proposed budget. I just wanted to let you know, I do expect, unfortunately, that I come back to you a year from now, we'll likely be asking for more dollars as we refine, the cost estimate gets refined closer to bid numbers, what we would expect in a bid, a competitive bid for a contractor on the project. And maybe in about a year, we hope to be year and a half or so, we hope to be out to bid on this project and be having construction completed. So I wanted to, that's my news. What is happening today? We're having to do a little bit more analysis on those basalt walls and the fill material that's underneath that very old street. A team was out this week, in fact, no, last week, and they were doing some more archaeological digging and some test pits on the project. And this, you might have noticed that First Street, the sidewalks were closed in a little section there. And that was to complete that work. It's all done and we should know the results soon, but it takes a little bit more time. And that's slowing things down a little bit. And what I've learned is it's potential that we will need to, we may not be able to get the project fully constructed in 2023. So we'll just keep chugging along until we can. We're making good progress. I don't feel like there's been a lag or a delay other than that additional environmental analysis that's needed. There was one other thing. Oh, the right of way. I wanted to just let you know that we have updated all of the required right of way that we'll need to acquire as part of this project. Fortunately, we have ODOT contracted. Oregon Department of Transportation will be contracted to do that work for us. We are involving Jonathan Kara, our city attorney, in this work. We're learning that we're going to have to do a land swap with the railroad, where there will be I don't know if Jonathan would characterize it this way, but the right-of-way line and the line between the right-of-way and the railroad is jagged along this section, and some of our existing First Street is in the railroad right-of-way. So in some places, there's a lot of right-of-way needed, and in other places, there's a little. So it's going to be a land swap that will occur, and Jonathan will be in lockstep with the team as part of those negotiations. And I really appreciate his help, and just wanted you to know that that also is complex. So do you have any questions about this at this time?
Does anyone have any questions? So Alice, I have a question about the land swap. Are we talking about south of the railroad, the line is jagged, or what are we talking about there?
South of the railroad, yes.
Okay.
Everything in the existing, where the existing asphalt is, the line is somewhere in there.
Okay. And is the land swap proposing land from the north side then, or what are you guys looking at?
So, Chair Long, can I step in?
Yes, please.
So, thank you, Alice. I'm working rather closely with Dale McCabe, the city engineer, and Dave Anderson, the public works director. We are in the process of coordinating. It technically is a land swap, but we're still working out the details with Union Pacific. And working with the railroad is very challenging for a number of different reasons. But ultimately, the idea here is that the First Street project has its bounds, and the city has an easement over railroad right-of-way, and the railroad has an easement over city right-of-way. And both easements cite different facilities. And so over the city, it's my understanding at least, that over the city easement, which runs over railroad right-of-way, there are railroad utilities. And over the railroad easement, which is over city right-of-way, there are city utilities. And so all of this is just to sort of illustrate how messy this type of thing can be. And so since we already have quite a bit of work invested into this First Street project, the minds that are involved here decided that it might make a whole lot of sense to sort of sanitize the whole situation. And so to the extent that we can do it, which is a complicated legal question that me and the city engineer and the public works director are sort of wading through slowly, we'd like to ultimately clean it all up by putting city facilities on city-owned property and railroad facilities on railroad-owned properties. We are waiting currently, as of today, still waiting for the railroad to get back to us. And it's something that I'm happy to update the board on in the future. Although it is also my understanding that this proposed land swap is slightly outside the scope of the work that ODOT will be doing as of right now. And so, as Alice mentioned, ODOT's involvement here is instrumental, considering the complexities associated with these federal monies. And so there's a lot of moving pieces, but it's something that we're currently working on. I'm optimistic that we'll find some sort of resolution. And if we can do it, and if the railroad is open to it, then I think it'll be a terrific way to sort of, we keep using the word sanitize internally, but sort of just clean up the intersections out there to make, who owns what very clear. And it makes everything a lot simpler.
Okay, so I like that, tidy things up.
Yeah.
Does that impact anything in the area around the Gitchell building where there's some?
So I don't think that it will, but the railroad has a right of way there, really right adjacent to the building, and that's primarily for safety. And so those trains go by, and the building is right there. And so to the extent that that property is implicated, I don't think it is, but it seems reasonable to me that even if it were, there would be that sort of that buffer there still to protect the building and to ensure that no developments are constructed right there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions on this topic for either Director Cannon or the city attorney?
Chair Long, I have
Dan?
a couple of quick questions. I hope they're quick questions. Backing up just a little bit, Director Cannon, can you characterize where we are with our, well, back to the previous topic, the budget, and the roughly $9.25 million that URA will have to allocate in the next 4 to 7 years, I guess. Where are we with strategic planning? Is it adequate? Where do we need to go with that, in your opinion?
If it's okay, Chair, I will, would it be okay if I give an update when we get to the staff comments, project updates in agenda item 8? Would that be okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. My other question, and I really don't want to go off on a tangent, but just want to ask it anyway, for City Attorney Kara.
Sure.
Is the Gitchell Waldron building, does the railroad consider it a thorn in their side as current? Is it part of the conversation?
No, I'm afraid that I haven't had a conversation with the railroad at all about the Gitchell building. I'm not sure it's on their radar. Although I do know I will say though that it is my understanding that there is a right of way there that is owned by them, and that they take their property very seriously. And so we haven't approached them on that issue, but I don't foresee that impacting the Gitchell as it stands at the moment. I know that in the past, when there were discussions about demolishing the building, for example, there had to be a certain sense of sensitivity almost to the idea that, well, if you want to demolish a building, for example, right next to a railroad track, you might want to notify the railroad. And there are certain ways to do that safely. And so I think that might have been a consideration in the past. I'm thinking around 2016. But we haven't spoken to them about that in quite some time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you. All right, back to you, Alice.
Verbal update on the Tony's building, and this is the good news segment of the agenda. We are progressing on the I think in August of 2021, so this past late summer, the board authorized the staff to move forward with participating in an EPA grant for the Tony's Building project. And the hope was that it wouldn't slow anything down and we would save some money. And I have been telling you month after month that I've been pleased with the progress we've made. This past about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the underground storage tank under the Federal Street sidewalk was removed, and I'm pleased to let you know that we found there was a little bit of trace contamination there, but it was within acceptable levels for DEQ. So we don't have to do anything more. It's covered, and we will replace the sidewalk if it's not already replaced. I haven't been out there in the last few days. So that will be done. And so that piece is done. And where we are headed now is we have a verbal commitment from Business Oregon as a part of this grant that we've been participating in. It lines us up for other sources of funding. And Business Oregon has committed verbally to us to that they're likely to award $250,000 of asbestos abatement dollars to our project. And in the Business Oregon representative I talked to said she would like to get us more. So I would say it's $250,000 plus. And so we'll know more in the coming months. I am working on, we did a preliminary application for the grant, and that led to us being invited to formally apply. I have a draft of that application in my inbox. I just need to get to it after I finish my budget here today and tomorrow and get that reviewed and sent off. I asked, what's the deadline? They said, anytime you want. So it's a rolling deadline. I think they'll be able to review it quickly. And what that will lead to, assuming we're approved, and I think we will be approved, it will lead to an approval for a grant agreement. And what is likely to be included is the amount of grant money that's available, which we believe will be in excess of $250,000. Plus, they would like to offer the ability for us to take advantage of a no interest and a combination of no interest, low interest loan to cover the remaining dollars needed to demolish the Tony's Building. So this is a wonderful opportunity. Do we need the loan? Not necessarily, but what I like about it is it allows us to do some financial planning around it with Angie and our consultant that we just talked to if needed. So the way it's been framed to me in preliminary, the preliminary package would be like a first year of the loan, 5-year loan agreement. First year would be no payments at all, and no interest, no payments. And then the second year would be interest only. Second and third year, I think, would be interest only. And the remaining 2 years would be a very modest interest rate, principal and interest payment, those final 2 years. No prepayment penalties. And I thought I heard no closing costs associated with this loan. So it's a good opportunity. So if we wanted, for instance, to pay it off early, we could in the first year during the no payment time. So more to come with that. I think I need to, once we've completed the application, which I have a draft of in my inbox, we will be able to, I think I have to get authorization from either this board to apply for the grant, officially authorized, or I need to get it from the city council. I'm not sure which agency would be the authorizing agency, but I'll be back in front of one of you to get authorization to move forward with this. I'm really pleased about this. This was the outcome I was looking for, to save significant dollars in this. This is quite costly. The asbestos alone was going to be $400,000 to $500,000, and out of a total of $700,000 to $750,000 to remove the building. So this is great, good news, and I wanted to share it with you. And this will be included, both the grant, the projected grant award, as well as the $750,000 that we may have to pay. That's a worst case scenario, will be included in the proposed budget that you see in your April budget committee meetings. So I think that's all I have to share on that project. And I'm happy as we move into the next agenda item at the chair's discretion. After I answer any questions you might have, I'm happy to provide some updates on the rec building and some other projects.
Does anyone have any questions for Director Cannon?
Good work and good news. Thanks, Alice.
Yeah, I've been smiling a lot this week in urban renewal. So I'll tell you one more good piece of news. I actually shared it already via email. If we move on to the staff comments, project updates, the good news I shared earlier in the week is that Mr. Carpenter and Ms. McQuaid have finished their work and they've passed final inspection on their 2 storefronts, the 2 eastern storefronts. And we will work with Jonathan Kara and finish up the sale of that property, and they will pay us for those 2 parcels. And we'll only be working on the final kind of that indoor-outdoor concept. He now has a permit from Wasco County, so he can move forward with the demo of the existing portion of the building that's still there and following the roof collapse of a couple of years ago. And then he'll get to work on building that. And I know you'll say, how soon will that be done? Well, last month you authorized him to have another year, basically until January of 2023 to complete that. I expect he's going to be under a certain amount of pressure to get that open, because when the weather's warm, he's going to want to have people sitting out there enjoying that space. So more to come, but he's, I think, managed to overcome a lot of obstacles to get to this place, including answer a lot of questions. He received I think it was a $200,000 or $250,000 grant from the Oregon SHPO State Historic Preservation Office for the project as well. And he had a number of questions from that agency that have now been answered. So I think he's in the home stretch, and I'm Mr. Carpenter and Ms. McQuaid, I'm really pleased with where we've come. And I think it looks pretty good as well.
Great. So I do see one member of the media, Cole Goodwin, on here with us, but Dr. Cannon, maybe in the next couple of weeks after you do your major things, or maybe you can assign another staff person. One of our goals was to do a better job of promoting when successful things happen with urban renewal. And I would really like to see a press release or some kind of acknowledgement that this has happened. So, you know, any way we can do that without adding too much burden to you, but this is a pretty major development on a piece of property that's been a blight for so long. So yes, very exciting.
Well, maybe we can buy some of those big scissors and have a ribbon cutting with once we do the closing of the property, something like that. I think that would be nice. They still need to finish some tenant improvements for when they get tenants. One of them will be, of course, owned by Ms. McQuaid, and that'll be the candy shop and candy and ice cream shop will be on the western side of those 2 storefronts. And then the other one hasn't been leased yet, but I think it would be very fitting to have some sort of an event master.
I'm sure the chamber would do something, and they have big scissors we could at least borrow if they're not using them themselves. But I do think it's good to get the word out now, even though it's not totally finalized, just because people have struggled for a long time to actually see what we do with urban renewal money. And there's a perception that we aren't really doing much with it, or that we're not making good choices, which is false. It's just that a lot of times those are more discreet and not everybody realizes what's going on. So
thank you for the reminder. That's good. Good, yeah. Very good reminder. 2 other projects I wanted to tell you about. Maybe it's only one other project. The strategic planning effort. That project is one that has been on pause. I hit the pause button on that because I was also assigned by the city manager to lead be the project manager for the Community Vision Project, and that will be wrapping up in the spring. So that will got some new dates and new milestones set yesterday by council. We hope to have that in front of council for adoption in early May 9th, or somewhere around about that time. And I hope to be, so let me lay out the spring for the Urban Renewal Board the way I see it. Next month, we will bring back a draft incentive program. At the January meeting, we had a very good discussion about how we might want to use some good best practice research that we gain from other agencies in the state to revamp our incentive program. We have at least 3 developers that I know are interested in using our program pronto as soon as possible. And so it'd be really good for us to get it updated. And I have a good draft again sitting in my inbox, and we're going to be refining that before it comes to you at the March meeting. So also at the March meeting, I'd like to set annual goals with this group, just a 1-year goal, 1-year set of goals, so that we can put that into the budget that's proposed. And we will be having Urban Renewal Board budget hearings on, let me get my calendar here, April 12th, and it may extend to April 13th, April 14th. You'll be getting notice of that, but that's our normal meeting date, I think. I don't know, actually, I'll check on that, but it will be coming in April. So stay tuned for those meetings. As you know, we have a very large budget committee that's composed not only of yourselves, but also other citizens that join you. And so there will be some people that, what I like to do is have you set some goals, so it sets the direction for the budget. And that way the budget committee can hear what those goals are heading into the budget, and they know why I proposed it the way I proposed it. So anyway, what you'll notice, I just finished up my draft that I turned into Angie Wilson, our finance director. I have proposed that we put more funds into the incentive program, significantly more, just because I think there's demand for it. And I think you're also going to be pleased with the new incentive program. It'll be that much easier, and we're going to increase the ceiling so that we can offer more to prospective developers and offer more return on investment in the final years of our agency's life. So strategic planning, what does that mean for us? So we will be busy in March with the incentive program and setting some annual goals, 1-year goals. In April, we'll be focusing on the budget. In May, I'd like to get back to strategic planning. I may need some help finishing this up, so I may bring on some short-term, maybe a consultant to help me do that report card, because my next step was to finish the report card to come back to you and let you know what we've accomplished. I think I need some more bandwidth for myself, and I will be seeking that out and trying to, so I can wrap this up. It's going to be important that we finish the strategic plan very, very soon. So, because we really don't have much life left for our agency, and it's good for you to be able to set some priorities. And what's exciting about all this too is we have a new city manager that I hope will be joining our staff sometime this spring, summer, and that will, I hope with that leadership change, we will maybe get some other ideas that come from outside the area about maybe ways that a new city manager may have used the program to leverage investments. So some folks come from outside the area that have some experience with it as well. So with that, I think that's all I have. Counselor or Board Member Richardson, did that answer your question about the strategic planning?
Yes, thanks, Alice. An exciting spring for all concerned.
Yes, Tim McLaughlin.
Yes, I have a little additional report. I was called by Mr. Carpenter to come down to do a walkthrough, and I noticed the floor was being laid, and he told me that it was reclaimed wood that he sent to Portland and had it planed and grooved, and it is gorgeous. And then he led me through the rest of the building with his vision for the future. Flat out amazing. So what an asset to our community, both of the Carla and Todd. That's my report. It looks great.
And any of you that want a walkthrough, he's very generous with giving you tours. And so he will offer that, and you should take advantage, throw on your mask and go take a tour of the building. And it's pretty amazing.
Great. Okay.
Chair Lindsay Jamay would like to say something.
Oh, thank you. I did not see that. Go ahead, Lindsay.
I just have a question when it comes to the strategic plan and knowing that there's a kind of timeline that we're working against for the program. Has there been any thought to make sure some of the projects that are included incorporate the taxing entities that have been contributing towards this program over the years? So I see some like common themes that could be pulled out of it when it comes to like schools, libraries, 4-H. There's like a children's component. Like as we're thinking about some projects for the downtown, could we figure out some pillars that may be giving back to those particular entities that have been contributing towards it? And you guys may already be thinking of it. It just popped to my mind as I'm listening tonight.
Let's put that on our, in the parking lot for our discussion. I like the idea. And I did not today share with you a copy of our urban renewal plan. It looks like it's as old as 1990. It looks like it was typed out on a typewriter. But the thing about urban renewal plans, which is good and negative in some ways, the good part is we have a spending limit, which is the maximum indebtedness. So we're telling taxpayers we're going to spend this amount. We also have urban renewal plan goals, and we also have a project list. So if the project isn't on the list, then we have to make either a minor amendment or a major amendment by state law to change it. But what I would like to do is take, as part of this report card that I mentioned that was the next step in the strategic plan, is maybe identify each of the projects that are currently on the list and unfinished, and what ties they might have to the schools and to the fire district and others, so that the taxing entities that are all involved can know what value they're getting out of the urban renewal investments. So I think that's a great idea. And then if you have some other ideas, let's talk about them during the strategic planning. So I like it.
Thank you. Any other updates?
I don't have anything else. Happy to answer any questions you might have that I haven't already talked about.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any questions? If not, then I'll go ahead and open it up to board member comments and questions. All right. I don't see any.
Chair Long,
Oh, yes.
I think there was one hand raised there.
Oh, it's me.
Oh,
Yeah.
Was it
hi,
me?
Kathy.
Yes.
Hi, I'm here. Quiet
Kathy.
tonight. I'm quiet tonight. I just wanted to make a comment, kind of towards Lindsay's idea. And one of the things that I've always thought about with urban renewal, and you know, there was a time when I was on the fire board, and you know, really one of the benefits is when you have a vibrant downtown, it really helps with workforce recruitment, I think. And so I think it's really important to recognize that, because when people are coming to work at the school districts or wherever, the fire district, the county, the city, just, you know, people are looking for things to do downtown and a pleasant.
Kathy, I think you froze.
Receive through this project. Am I back?
You're back.
Yeah, my internet's unstable tonight. Did you get it?
Right.
Did you hear me?
I did. Alice, did you know, because you're adding that probably to the parking lot.
Yeah, so what I heard you say is a vibrant downtown, in short, kind of makes all boats rise for job recruitment, livability, and so forth. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, job recruitment, retention, all those things, quality of, you know, living experience here in the Dalles. But you said it actually better. Thank you. I like that boat rising thing. Thank you.
That sounds like a flood, maybe a catastrophic flood. I didn't mean it that way. But I don't know about the rest of you. I was here Friday night and Sunday night, and I got to see how crowded the downtown was during the chocolate crawl event. And then also the Sunday night with Super Bowl, and I guess people may be going out for Valentine's Day on Sunday. But I heard from Mr. Carpenter again, who was giving me a project update yesterday. He said he had 70 reservations yesterday at his restaurant. 770, that's a lot. So I was impressed with, it feels like there's a buzz downtown that hasn't been there in a while, and it's just great to see.
Well, I'll give you my perspective on the Granada Theater, which was a great investment for our community, because on Friday nights, Saturday nights, you can have dinner and a movie. It's just terrific. So it's another activity that people can take in. And when you walk in to see that theater back, I mean, go in there and check that out. It's wonderful. So good things are happening in the Dalles. We just need to keep focusing on making improvements and leveraging all the monies to make things better.
Great. Anyone else? Okay. So sorry, for a second, it looked like Mayor Mays was leaning forward. I was expecting his mic to become unmuted.
Well,
Distracted me.
actually, I just wanted to welcome Lindsay. I wasn't here at the beginning of the meeting, and I expect that we'll have another appointment to the Urban Renewal Board by your next meeting. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay, so I have a request for the board. I'm going to ask all of you to both promote and participate in the city's community visioning and planning process. We need to get as much diverse participation as possible. And so it's important for you to participate, but it's also important for you to get that out to anyone and everyone you know, particularly if you can think of people or groups of people who don't normally participate in this kind of event. We'll make sure you're on the email list so you'll get the timeline, but there's going to be an upcoming town hall where people can participate online. We'll have some breakout sessions. And then following that, we'll also have another community survey. And so people can, even if they can't attend the town hall, which we hope they can, but if they can't, they can still go on to the survey and give their feedback. Because the city council intends for this to be a big part of our development for the Dalles for the long term. And so we just want to make sure we get as much input from as many different people as possible. So I'd really appreciate that.
The town hall, you will receive an email. The town hall is going to be March 9th. It'll be a virtual meeting. You'll get a link. The link will be an opportunity for you to register for the event. And we may send that out tomorrow or Thursday. And it'll be 5:30 to 7 in the evening. So look forward to your participation.
Thanks, Alice. Lindsay?
Sorry, I have more questions than I expected on night one.
No, you haven't asked enough. Keep going.
Is there my brain is marketing. Is there a marketing plan to get the word out for that? Because when I think of who engages with us as a business, Instagram, Facebook, like, are there templates we can share out with everyone? Flyers that we can get up around town? I'm happy to share it on ours, and I can get other business owners to do that as well. If you need help creating those type of materials, let me know. I'm happy to help.
Thank you.
Chair Long, and I need to see Jamae on your name. I keep wanting to call you Board Member Brady, Board Member Jamae. I wanted to let you know that I saw a draft Facebook post today on my inbox, and we'll get that posted likely tomorrow, as well as the link to register. And we have an email list of 600, and I got some ideas from Councilor Richardson today of some other names to add to our list it'll be sent out via MailChimp later in the week. That email will go out, and I think we have I like the graphic design that our consultant has been using with us on this. So I think it's pretty well done. What I would love, and I'm glad you offered, is I would love for you to help us promote the event on your own. Either I can share the JPEG with you and you can post it on your Instagram. The city doesn't have an Instagram account yet, and I hope we will have one in the next year or two. And but we do have Facebook, and that's pretty active. So when we did the original survey, I personally asked quite a few people to post on their own personal page to share the information so that more people would see it. So we'll do the same this time. If you have ideas of marketing that I haven't thought of, I would love to hear those.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions before I adjourn the meeting?
I have a little bit more good news. At
Okay.
Lions Club today, Steve Lawrence shared that the Civic received a grant to improve the HVAC system, and now it can be fully utilized in the theater. That's really good news for our community again. So good
That's
things are
great.
happening in the Dalles.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you everyone for attending and participating and adding in your 2 cents worth. I appreciate it. And I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you, Alice.